The massive space station hung in the darkness like a small metal moon. Its name was Concordia Prime, and it was the most important place in the galaxy. Inside its gleaming halls, representatives from 127 different alien species gathered for their regular meeting. Ambassador Zethkar walked into the great meeting hall with his usual confident stride. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like old leather. His people, the Hegemony, were one of the three most powerful groups in the galaxy. They controlled the biggest armies and the strongest warships. The meeting hall was enormous. It could hold thousands of beings, and today it was almost full. Creatures of every shape and size sat in their assigned seats. Some looked like giant insects. Others resembled walking trees or floating jellies. A few were so strange that humans would have trouble even describing them. But there were no humans here. There never had been. Zethkar stepped up to the speaker's platform and called for silence. His voice echoed through the hall as hundreds of different creatures turned their attention to him. "Friends and allies," he began. "Welcome to the 847th session of the Galactic Council. As always, we have much to discuss." He paused and looked at a specific empty section of seats. Those seats had been empty for 300 years. "Once again," Zethkar continued, "the third planet of the Sol system has failed to respond to our communications. Earth remains silent." A few creatures in the audience made sounds that might have been sighs or clicks of disappointment. This was an old topic, one they had discussed many times before. Dr. Veltar, the Council's chief scientist for studying new species, stood up to speak. She was short and round, covered in blue fur, with 4 arms and large black eyes. "The situation with Earth is quite clear," she said in her squeaky voice. "We discovered this species during our great survey 300 years ago. At that time they showed the usual signs of early development. They had basic machines, simple rockets, and primitive communication systems." She pressed a button, and a holographic image appeared above the hall. It showed a blue and green planet with white clouds swirling around it. "Our standard procedure," Dr. Veltar continued, "is to watch new species for 500 years before making contact. This gives them time to develop properly. But when we tried to contact Earth 50 years ago, we found nothing. The image changed to show charts and graphs with no activity, no radio signals, no space travel, no response to any of our messages, even very powerful ones. The planet appears to be completely dead." Murmurs filled the hall as delegates discussed this among themselves. It was not unusual for new species to destroy themselves before reaching the stars. In fact, it happened quite often. Zethkar nodded, grimly. "What is your scientific conclusion, Dr. Veltar?" "Mass extinction," she replied without hesitation. "The evidence suggests they destroyed their own civilization, perhaps through war, disease, or environmental collapse. We see this pattern regularly among developing species." She pressed another button, and the hologram showed several other dead planets. The Korth destroyed themselves with biological weapons. The Yandari poisoned their own atmosphere. The Melkons fought nuclear wars until nothing remained. Earth appears to have followed the same path. In the audience, Ambassador Throkan of the Merchant Collective leaned forward. He was a creature that looked like a cross between a spider and a businessman, with 8 arms that were always counting something. "If Earth is truly dead," Throkan said in his hissing voice, "then we should remove it from our records. Dead worlds waste Council resources." Several other delegates agreed. The Council had many living species to manage. Why spend time and energy on a dead planet? Zethkar looked around the hall. "Are there any objections to declaring Earth officially extinct and removing it from active monitoring?" Silence filled the enormous space. No one spoke up for the silent blue world. "Very well," Zethkar announced. "Let the record show that the species known as humans from the planet Earth are declared extinct as of this date. All monitoring activities will cease immediately." He made a note on his electronic pad, and somewhere in the Council's vast computer systems, Earth's file was moved to the archive of dead civilizations. "Now," Zethkar continued, "let us move on to more pressing matters. The Merchant Collective has filed a complaint about trade route violations in the Outer Rim." As the meeting continued, No one paid attention to the automatic sensor reports that were filed every hour. These reports came from monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, watching for unusual activity. If anyone had looked carefully at the report from the edge of the Sol system, they might have noticed something strange. The sensors had detected tiny gravitational disturbances near the area where the planet Pluto orbited the Sun. But the computer that processed these reports was programmed to ignore small anomalies. Space was full of asteroids, comets, and other debris that caused minor gravitational effects. The disturbances near Pluto were filed under natural stellar phenomena and forgotten. Meanwhile, the council meeting continued for several more hours. They discussed trade disputes between different alien merchants. They argued about territorial rights in distant star systems. They debated new taxes and regulations. The three major powers, the hegemony, the merchant collective, and the ascendant sphere, dominated every conversation. Smaller species mostly listened and agreed with whatever the big powers decided. This was how the galaxy worked. The strong ruled, and the weak obeyed. It had been this way for thousands of years. As the meeting finally ended, delegates began to leave the Great Hall. They would return to their homeworlds and report to their governments. Most would forget about Earth within a few days. Zethkar remained on the platform, reviewing his notes for the next day's sessions. He was satisfied with how things had gone. One less dead world to worry about meant more resources could be focused on important matters. He had no way of knowing that at that very moment, in the cold darkness near Pluto, something was watching him. The gravitational disturbances that the sensors had detected were not natural phenomena. They were caused by massive ships using technology that the Galactic Council had never seen before, ships that could hide from any scanner, move without being detected, and observe everything that happened in the galaxy. Ships built by humans. Earth was not dead. It was not silent by accident. For 300 years, humanity had been listening to every word the Galactic Council said. They had learned about alien technology, alien politics, and alien weaknesses. And now, after 3 centuries of careful preparation, they were almost ready to introduce themselves to the galaxy. But not as the primitive species the Council expected to find. Not as another weak civilization begging for protection and guidance. When Earth finally broke its silence, it would be as equals, or perhaps as something more than equals. The humans had been busy during their 300 years of silence. Very busy indeed. But for now they remained hidden in the darkness, watching and waiting for the right moment to change the galaxy forever. Captain Sarah Chen floated in the command chair of her ship, staring at the screens that showed the Galactic Council meeting. Around her, the bridge of the UNSV Prometheus hummed quietly with advanced technology that no alien species had ever seen. The Prometheus was hidden in the cold darkness beyond Pluto, along with dozens of other human ships. They were all invisible to alien sensors, using stealth technology that humanity had spent 2 centuries perfecting. Another council session. Same result, said Lieutenant Commander Okafor from his station. He was monitoring the alien communication networks, listening to every word they said. They still think we're extinct. Sarah nodded as she watched Ambassador Zethkar formally declare humanity dead. She had seen this moment coming for months, but it still felt strange to watch aliens discuss her species like they were ancient. History. Good, she said quietly. Let them think that a little longer. The bridge crew continued their work in silence. They were all part of something called the Deep Space Monitoring Initiative, humanity's secret eyes and ears in the galaxy. For 300 years, humans like them had been watching, learning, and preparing. It had all started when Earth's radio telescopes first detected alien signals in the year 2387. The discovery had changed everything. Humanity learned they were not alone in the universe, and more importantly, they learned they were not ready to meet their neighbors. The alien signals told a story of a galaxy dominated by powerful civilizations. These aliens had technology that was centuries ahead of Earth. They had faster-than-light travel, energy weapons, and ships that could destroy planets. Most frightening of all, humanity learned that the Galactic Council was not the peaceful organization it pretended to be. By intercepting their communications, humans discovered the truth about how the galaxy really worked. The three major powers, the hegemony, the merchant collective, and the ascendant sphere, controlled everything. They used smaller species as workers, soldiers, and sources of raw materials. Any species that tried to resist was crushed or wiped out completely. Earth's leaders had faced a terrible choice. They could reveal themselves and hope the aliens would be kind, or they could prepare for the worst. They chose to prepare. The Great Silence began immediately. Every radio transmission from Earth stopped. Every satellite was shielded or hidden. From space, Earth looked like a dead world while humanity worked frantically to catch up with their alien neighbors. It was the biggest project in human history. Every nation on Earth contributed. Scientists worked together to understand alien technology from the signals they intercepted. Engineers designed new ships and weapons. Soldiers trained for battles they hoped would never come. Sarah remembered learning about this history in school. Her great-grandmother had been one of the first volunteers for the space monitoring program. Her grandmother had helped build the first hidden bases in the asteroid belt. Her mother had commanded one of the early stealth ships. Now it was Sarah's turn to serve humanity's long-term plan. Status report on Project Overwatch, she asked her crew. Lieutenant Commander Okafor checked his screens. 947 vessels completed and in position. The remaining 53 will be operational within the month. Sarah smiled at those numbers. Project Overwatch was humanity's ace in the hole. 1,000 of the most advanced warships ever built, all hidden throughout the galaxy and ready for action. Each ship was more powerful than anything in the alien fleets. Human technology had advanced far beyond what the Council possessed, thanks to 3 centuries of focused development and careful study of alien weaknesses. "How are our monitoring stations?" Sarah asked. "All operational," replied Ensign Martinez from the communication station. "We're receiving data from our observers on 47 different worlds. The aliens still have no idea we're there." Sarah nodded. Humanity had not just built ships during the Great Silence. They had also placed secret monitoring stations throughout the galaxy, hidden bases where human agents could watch alien civilizations up close. These agents looked human, but they had been genetically modified to survive on alien worlds. They had spent decades learning alien languages, studying alien cultures, and gathering intelligence about potential threats. The information they provided had been invaluable. Humanity now knew more about galactic politics than most aliens did. They knew which species were allies, which were enemies, and which were just trying to survive. They also knew about the Council's dirty secrets. The forced labor camps where primitive species worked as slaves. The strip mining operations that destroyed entire planets. The secret police that eliminated anyone who asked too many questions. "Captain," said Dr. Kim from the science station, "we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command." Sarah straightened in her chair. Priority messages were rare and always important. "Put it through," she ordered. The main screen flickered, and Admiral Rodriguez appeared. He was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes, but his voice was strong and clear. "Attention all deep space units," he began. "Phase 1 of the final protocol is complete. The Council has officially declared humanity extinct and removed us from active monitoring." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The final protocol was humanity's plan for revealing themselves to the galaxy. It had been carefully designed over many decades with multiple phases and backup plans. "Phase 2 begins immediately," Admiral Rodriguez continued. "All stealth ships are to move to their designated positions around Council territories. Monitoring stations are to increase surveillance of all major alien military installations, and all personnel are to prepare for possible first contact within the next 6 months." The message ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. After 300 years of hiding, humanity was finally ready to step into the light. But they would not step out as the primitive species the aliens expected. They would reveal themselves as the most powerful civilization the galaxy had ever seen. "You heard the Admiral?" Sarah said to her crew. "Set course for the Vega system. It's time to take our position." As the Prometheus began to move through space with its engines completely silent, Sarah thought about what lay ahead. Soon, Very soon, the galaxy would learn that Earth was not dead. In fact, Earth had been very much alive, and it had been getting ready for this moment for 3 centuries. The aliens thought they ruled the galaxy. They were about to discover how wrong they were. Around the galaxy, 947 other human ships were receiving the same orders and beginning their final movements. Each captain knew their role in the plan that would change everything. Humanity had been patient, they had been careful, they had been quiet. But their silence was about to end with the sound of 1,000 warships demanding to be heard. Senior Sensor Technician Kixtel was having a normal day at his station on Concordia Prime, when every alarm in the monitoring center started screaming at once. The young alien jumped so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. His 4 eyes widened, in panic as red warning lights flashed throughout the room. Around him, other technicians scrambled to check their equipment. "What is happening?" shouted Supervisor Kralden as he rushed into the room. The old supervisor had worked at the station for 40 years and had never seen anything like this. Kixtel stared at his screens in disbelief. The numbers made no sense. According to his instruments, over 1,000 massive ships had just appeared near the station. But when he looked at the visual displays, he saw nothing but empty space. "Sir," Kixtel said, his voice shaking, "the sensors are detecting a huge fleet, but there's nothing on visual." "That's impossible," Kralden snapped. "Check for system malfunctions." Other technicians worked frantically at their stations, running diagnostic tests on every piece of equipment in the monitoring center. After several tense minutes, they all reported the same thing. "No malfunctions detected, sir," said Technician Yelmara. "All systems are working perfectly." Kixtel looked at his readings again and felt sick to his stomach. "Sir, the energy signatures are massive. These ships are bigger than anything in our databases. And the technology readings, they're showing power levels that should be impossible." In the great meeting hall of the council, Ambassador Zethkar was discussing trade regulations with the merchant collective when an aide rushed up to whisper urgently in his ear. Zethkar's gray face went pale. He stood up quickly, interrupting the merchant who was speaking. "Emergency session," he announced loudly. "All delegates return to your seats immediately." The confused aliens in the hall began talking among themselves as they took their places. Many of them looked worried. Emergency sessions were rare and usually meant serious trouble. Within minutes, the hall was full again. Zethkar stepped up to the speaker's platform with a grim expression. "Delegates," he began, "we have received an urgent report from our monitoring stations. Long-range sensors are detecting what appears to be a large fleet approaching our position." The hall erupted in surprised voices and worried sounds. Several delegates stood up to ask questions, but Zethkar raised his hand for silence. "The situation is unclear," he continued. "The ships do not match any known designs in our databases. They are not responding to our communication attempts, and most disturbing of all, they appear to be using some kind of advanced stealth technology." Ambassador Throkan of the Merchant Collective scuttled forward on his 8 legs. "How large is this fleet?" he asked in his hissing voice. Zethkar hesitated before answering. "Our sensors indicate over 1,000 vessels." The hall exploded in chaos. Delegates shouted questions and demands for information. Some began making urgent calls to their home governments. Others demanded immediate evacuation of the station. Through all the noise, General Krelthax of the Hegemony military stood up. He was a massive creature, almost 3 meters tall, with thick armor-like skin and fierce red eyes. "Silence," he roared, and the hall immediately went quiet. "If there is an unknown fleet approaching, then this is a military matter. I am ordering all Hegemony ships to defensive positions around the station." "The collective is doing the same," announced Throkan quickly. "Our merchant vessels may not be warships, but they are well armed." "The Ascendant Sphere concurs," added Ambassador Silthus, whose people were known for their advanced technology. "Our science ships will analyze these unknown vessels while our escorts protect the station." As the 3 major powers began coordinating their response, none of them noticed that their movements were being watched and analyzed by the very fleet they were trying to defend against. In the monitoring center, Kixtel continued to study the impossible readings on his screens. The unknown fleet maintained perfect formation while remaining completely invisible to visual scanners. Their movements were precise and coordinated in a way that suggested military discipline of the highest order. "Sir," he called to his supervisor, "I'm detecting movement in the unknown fleet. They're taking positions around our defensive ships." Crowden rushed over to look at the displays. What he saw made his blood run cold. The unknown ships were not just approaching the station, they were surrounding it completely. Worse, they were positioning themselves in a way that trapped the Council's defensive fleets. "How is this possible?" Crowden whispered. "Our ships are the most advanced in the galaxy." Suddenly, every screen in the monitoring center flickered. For a moment, all the displays went black. Then new words appeared in the ancient Earth language that had been declared dead just hours earlier. "Incoming transmission from unknown fleet," Kixtel announced, his voice barely a whisper. The transmission was being broadcast on frequencies that the Council had not used for centuries, the same frequencies that Earth had used for their primitive radio communications 300 years ago. In the Great Hall, delegates watched in stunned silence as the main display activated. A face appeared on the screen, clearly alien to most of the species present but unmistakably intelligent. The face belonged to a middle-aged female with pale skin, gray hair, and sharp blue eyes. She wore a uniform that was simple but clearly military in design. Behind her, the bridge of her ship showed technology that made the Council's finest vessels look primitive. When she spoke, her words were in perfect galactic standard, the common language used by all Council species. "Galactic Council," she said calmly. "This is Admiral Elena Vasquez of the United Nations Space Command. We apologize for missing your meetings. We've been rather busy." The silence in the hall was complete. Every delegate stared at the screen. In shock and disbelief, Admiral Vasquez continued speaking as if she was discussing the weather. "I understand you recently declared our species extinct. We're afraid that report was somewhat premature." Ambassador Zeth Carr finally found his voice. "This is impossible. Earth was surveyed, Earth was silent. Earth showed no signs of advanced civilization." The human admiral smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. "Oh, we were there, Ambassador. We were listening to every word you said. We heard your debates about our primitive technology. We heard your discussions about what to do with species like ours." She paused, and her expression became serious. "We heard what happened to the Cathani when they made contact too early. We heard about the Mordoon and their strip-mined worlds. We heard about the Yiltar and how they were eliminated for asking too many questions." Around the hall, delegates began to understand the implications of her words. Earth had not been silent by accident. They had been hiding deliberately. "So we made a decision," Admiral Vasquez continued. "We decided that we would not make contact until we could do so as equals. It took us 300 years to build a civilization capable of defending itself." General Krelthak stepped forward, his armor plates bristling with anger. "You dare spy on the Galactic Council? This is an act of war." Admiral Vasquez looked directly at him through the screen. "General, your ships are currently surrounded by mine. Your station is within range of weapons that could reduce it to atoms. Your 3 fleets combined could not scratch the hull of my smallest escort vessel." She leaned forward slightly. "This is not an act of war, General. This is an act of introduction." In the monitoring center, Kixtel watched his displays with growing terror. The energy readings from the human fleet were beyond anything he had ever seen. Each human ship showed power levels that exceeded entire Council battle groups. "They could destroy everything," he whispered to his supervisor. "Our entire fleet, the station, everything. They could do it in minutes." But the humans were not firing. They were just waiting, their 1,000 ships holding perfect formation around the trapped Council forces. On the main screen, Admiral Vasquez spoke again. "We have a great deal to discuss, honorable delegates, but first I believe you need to update your records. Earth is not extinct. Humanity is not primitive, and we are no longer silent. The age of human isolation was over. The age of galactic change had begun." The space around Concordia Prime began to shimmer like water in the sunlight. One by one, massive shapes started to appear where empty space had been just moments before. In the council hall, delegates pressed against the viewing windows to see the impossible sight outside. 1,000 human warships materialized in perfect formation, their dark hulls seeming to absorb the light from nearby stars. Each ship was enormous, larger than the biggest vessels in the council fleets. Their design was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The hulls were smooth and angular, with no visible weapons ports or engine exhausts. They looked more like pieces of advanced art than instruments of war. But the sensor readings told a different story. Each human ship radiated power that could crack planets. Their technology signatures were centuries beyond anything in the galactic databases. Admiral Vasquez's image remained on the main screen, calm and confident as chaos erupted around her in the council hall. Behind her, the bridge of her flagship showed the same impossible technology that surrounded the station. "Honored delegates," she said, her voice carrying easily over the frightened sounds of the aliens. "I am Admiral Elena Vasquez, commanding the First Contact Fleet of the United Nations Space Command. I represent the 7 billion inhabitants of Earth and our various off-world colonies." Dr. Veltar, the xenobiologist who had declared humanity extinct just hours earlier, stood up on shaking legs. Her blue fur was standing on end with fear. "But the scans?" she stammered. "The surveys showed no civilization, no technology, no space capability. How is this possible?" Admiral Vasquez turned her attention to the small scientist. "Dr. Veltar, isn't it? We've been watching you for quite some time. We know about your survey protocols. We know about your observation periods. Most importantly, we know what happens to species that make contact before they're ready." The Admiral gestured, and suddenly the air above the council hall filled with holographic displays. Images appeared showing dozens of different alien worlds and species. "The Cathani," Vasquez said as one image showed a peaceful green world. "They made contact with you 800 years ago. They were a kind species, interested in art and philosophy." The image changed to show the same world, but now it was covered with massive farms and factories. Thin, sad-looking aliens worked in the fields under the supervision of armed guards. Today they serve as agricultural slaves for the merchant collective. Their art is gone. Their philosophy is forgotten. They exist only to grow food for their masters. Angry murmurs filled the hall as the smaller council species recognized the truth in the humans' words. Many of them had wondered what happened to species that seemed to disappear after joining the council. Another image appeared, showing a world of crystal cities and floating platforms. "The Mordoon," Admiral Vasquez continued. "They were master, engineers and builders. Their technology was considered quite advanced when they made contact 500 years ago." The new image showed the same world stripped bare, its crystal cities gone and its surface scarred by massive mining operations. The hegemony decided their technology was too dangerous for them to keep. Their weapons were confiscated for galactic security. Their factories were dismantled. Their knowledge was classified. Today, their world provides raw materials for hegemony shipyards. General Krelthax started to object, but Admiral Vasquez was not finished. "The Yiltar," she said as a third set of images appeared. They were scientists and explorers. They asked questions about council policies. They wanted to know why some species seemed to disappear after joining. The final image showed empty space where a planet had once been. They were declared a threat to galactic stability. The Ascendant Sphere decided the safest solution was complete elimination. Their sun was destabilized. Their entire solar system was destroyed. Complete silence filled the council hall. Even the three major powers had no response to the evidence being presented. "We watched all of this happen," Admiral Vasquez said quietly. "We recorded everything. We learned what the Galactic Council really was. Not a federation of equals, but a system designed to exploit weaker species." Ambassador Zethkar finally found his voice. "Even if what you say is true, you cannot judge an entire galactic civilization based on past mistakes. The Council has evolved. We have learned from our errors, have you?" Admiral Vasquez asked. She gestured again, and new images appeared showing recent events. Last month, the hegemony annexed 3 more star systems from the Kelnari Republic. 2 weeks ago, The merchant collective increased tribute demands on 17 different species. Yesterday, the Ascendant Sphere conducted research experiments on captured Rillan civilians. Each accusation was accompanied by detailed evidence, surveillance footage, communication intercepts, and official documents that the three powers thought were secret. The smaller species in the council began to look at each other with new understanding. They had always suspected that the major powers were not as benevolent as they claimed, but they had never seen proof before. Ambassador Throken scuttled forward angrily. These accusations are outrageous. Even if they were true, what gives you the right to spy on sovereign governments? The right of survival, Admiral Vasquez replied simply. We refuse to let our species become another footnote in your history books. So we prepared. She stood up from her command chair, and the camera followed her to a large display showing the positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. For 300 years, we have been watching and learning. We studied your technology until we could build better versions. We analyzed your military tactics until we could counter them perfectly. We mapped your territories until we knew them better than you do. The display zoomed in to show human ships positioned near every major council installation. We have ships at your military bases, your shipyards, your research facilities, and your government centers. We could have ended your civilization at any time during the past 50 years. Instead, we chose to wait and hope that you would change on your own. General Krelthax's red eyes blazed with fury. You threaten the council with your hidden fleet? This is an act of war. Our combined armies will crush you. Admiral Vasquez looked at him with something that might have been pity. General, let me explain your tactical situation. Your three fleets have a total of 843 ships in this area. My fleet has 1,000 ships, each more advanced than your best vessels. The display changed to show the current positions of all ships around the station. Your ships are designed for fighting each other, weapons that work against Council technology, shields that stop Council weapons. Our ships are designed specifically to fight you. We know every weakness in your designs because we've been studying them for 3 centuries. She pointed to different sections of the tactical display. Your hegemony dreadnoughts have vulnerable reactor shielding. Your collective cruisers have weak points in their engine systems. Your sphere vessels rely on technology that we can disable remotely. General Krelthax looked at the display and felt his confidence drain away. The human admiral was right. The council fleets were positioned exactly where she said they would be most vulnerable. But this is not about military strength, Admiral, Vasquez continued. This is about the future of the galaxy. We did not come here to conquer or destroy. We came here to change things. She turned back to face the council directly. The age of exploitation is over. The time when strong species could prey on weak ones has ended. Humanity is offering something new, a galaxy where all species can develop freely and safely. Ambassador Silthese of the Ascendant Sphere spoke for the first time. What exactly are you proposing, Admiral? Simple, Vasquez replied. Join us in creating a new galactic order, end the tribute systems, stop the forced technology transfers, allow species to develop at their own pace without interference. She paused and looked around the hall at all the different faces watching her, or refuse, and discover what happens when a species that has been preparing for war for 300 years decides to stop being patient. The choice was clear, and everyone in the hall understood it. The humans were offering the galaxy a chance to change peacefully. It was an offer that could not be refused. The emergency session stretched through the night and into the next day. Admiral Vasquez and her diplomatic team had been transported to Concordia Prime under heavy security, though everyone understood that the security was mostly for show. Humans could have taken the station at any time if they wanted to. Dr. James Harrison, Earth's chief expert on galactic law, stood before the council with a stack of documents that represented 3 centuries of careful legal preparation. He was a thin man with dark skin and intelligent eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Honorable delegates, Dr. Harrison began, let me direct your attention to Article 12 of the Galactic Council Charter. The main screen displayed the relevant text in multiple alien languages. Dr. Harrison read it aloud in perfect galactic standard, Any species achieving faster than light travel and demonstrating galactic-level civilization is entitled to immediate membership with full voting rights and representation proportional to their population and territorial holdings. He looked around the hall with a slight smile. Humanity has achieved faster than light travel, as evidenced by our presence here. We have demonstrated galactic-level civilization through our technology and infrastructure. Therefore, we are entitled to immediate membership. Ambassador Zethkar looked uncomfortable. The charter also requires approval by majority vote of existing members. True, Dr. Harrison agreed, but it also states that such approval cannot be denied based on political considerations, only on failure to meet the technical requirements. He pressed a button, and new documents appeared on the screen. We have prepared detailed evidence of our technological achievements, population figures, and territorial claims. Everything is properly documented according to Council standards. The three major powers tried desperately to find legal loopholes, but human lawyers had spent decades studying every word of galactic law. They had prepared for every possible argument. Furthermore, Dr. Harrison continued, our analysis of Council records shows systematic violations of the non-interference directive by all three major powers. He gestured, and the screen filled with thousands of documents. Communication intercepts, financial records, and classified reports that the major powers thought were secret. We have documented evidence of forced technology transfers, resource extraction without consent, and deliberate suppression of developing species. These violations represent serious breaches of galactic law. The smaller council members began to murmur among themselves. Many of them had suspected these violations for years, but they had never seen proof before. What are you suggesting? Asked Ambassador Silthus nervously. Nothing dramatic, Dr. Harrison replied calmly. Simply that the Council should begin, following its own laws, stop the forced tribute systems, end the territorial seizures, allow species to develop naturally without interference. As the legal arguments continued, something else was happening in the hall. The smaller species were beginning to realize that they finally had protection from their supposed protectors. Delegate Mork of the Fenari people stood up slowly. His species had been under hegemony protection for 200 years, providing resources and soldiers while receiving very little in return. If humanity is offering to protect developing species, Mork said carefully, what guarantees do we have that you will not simply replace the current system with your own? Admiral Vasquez answered personally. A fair question, Delegate Mork. We propose a new structure. A true federation where each species has equal representation regardless of their military or economic power. She stood and walked to the center of the hall. We are not interested in ruling the galaxy. We have our own worlds to manage and our own people to care for. What we want is a galaxy where species can grow and develop without fear. Pretty words, General Krelthax interrupted angrily. But you threaten us with overwhelming force. How is that different from what you accuse us of doing? Admiral Vasquez turned to face the hegemony general directly. The difference, General, is that we are offering you a choice. Join us in creating something better or continue with the old system and face the consequences. What consequences? Krelthax demanded. The Admiral's expression became very serious. Let me be clear about our capabilities, General. Our fleet positions are as follows. The tactical display updated to show human ships not just around Concordia Prime, but throughout the galaxy. Red dots appeared at every major Council military base, shipyard, and strategic installation across 40 star systems. We have been in position for 6 months, Admiral Vasquez explained to the horrified faces around her. Every major Council asset is currently within range of our weapons. We could have ended your civilization at any time. General Krelthax stared at the display in shock. The humans had completely surrounded every important hegemony installation without being detected. Your shipyards at Keth Prime, 6 human vessels in position. Your fortress at Beller Gate, 4 ships waiting. Your naval academy at Thres, 2 ships with full targeting solutions. She continued listing installations across hegemony space, then moved on to merchant collective holdings and Ascendant Sphere territories. Every important location was covered. Instead of destroying you, the Admiral continued, we chose to talk. We chose to offer you the chance to change peacefully. The silence in the hall was deafening. Every delegate understood that they were looking at the most successful military operation in galactic history, and the humans had achieved it without firing a single shot. Ambassador Throkan finally spoke, his voice much quieter than usual. What? What exactly do you want from us? Simple cooperation, Admiral Vasquez replied. End the tribute systems that exploit weaker species. Stop the territorial expansion that destroys developing civilizations. Allow the galaxy to grow naturally, instead of being controlled by three major powers. Over the next several hours, the details were worked out. The Treaty of Terra, as it came to be known, completely restructured galactic civilization. The forced tribute system was abolished immediately. Species that had been providing resources to the major powers were freed to use those resources for their own development. Occupied worlds were granted independence, though they could choose to maintain trade relationships with their former occupiers. Three major powers were required to withdraw their military forces from systems that belonged to other species. Most importantly, a new council structure was established with equal representation for all species, regardless of their size or power. The vote for humanity's admission to the council was unanimous. No one dared vote against the species that had just demonstrated they could destroy the entire galactic order whenever they chose. But something unexpected happened during the voting. The smaller species began to speak up in ways they never had before. Delegate Mork formally accused the hegemony of resource theft. The Kelnari Republic demanded the return of their annexed territories. A dozen other species filed complaints about forced technology transfers and military occupation. For the first time in galactic history, the weak were not afraid to challenge the strong. The major powers tried to resist, but they quickly discovered that their military advantage had vanished overnight. Human ships shadowed their fleets, ready to intervene if they tried to use force against smaller species. Within weeks, the galaxy began to change in ways that no one had thought possible. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were suddenly free. Worlds that had been strip-mined for their resources began to recover. Technologies that had been hoarded by the major powers were shared freely. 3 months after first contact, Admiral Vasquez stood in the observation deck of Concordia Prime, watching Earth's sun rise over the station's horizon. The station was now under Joint Council Human Administration, with humans serving as peacekeepers and mediators. "Status report, Admiral?" asked Commander Chen, who had been promoted from her position on the Prometheus. "Mission accomplished, Commander," Vasquez replied with satisfaction. "Earth is no longer alone in the universe." Outside the observation deck, human and alien ships patrolled together through space. The sight would have been impossible just months earlier, but now it was becoming routine. The age of galactic tyranny was over. The three major powers still existed, but they were no longer the absolute rulers they had once been. They had to follow the same laws as everyone else. More importantly, species throughout the galaxy were beginning to develop in ways that had been suppressed for thousands of years. Art, science, and philosophy were flourishing as civilizations were finally free to explore their own potential. "Admiral," Commander Chen said quietly, "do you think we made the right choice, revealing ourselves like this?" Vasquez smiled as she watched a group of young aliens from different species working together on a research project. A few months ago, their people had been enemies. Now, they were collaborating freely. 300 years ago, our ancestors decided that humanity would not become another victim of galactic politics, she said. Today, we've ensured that no other species will become victims either. She turned away from the window and headed back to her duties. There was still much work to be done. The galaxy was changing rapidly and humans had become its unofficial guardians. But for the first time in galactic history, that change was happening peacefully.